Aboard the Deep Space Station number 9 in the Pro Sector, the shift manager watches her fairly fresh crew as they manage all the ships moving in and out. That is when she notices a particular silhouette on her LiDAR. She seems to smile a bit as her tail begins to shake just a little bit. She thinks to herself, that's interesting. This catches the attention of the one manning the radar, who turns and says, "What? I don't understand. Why are you so interested? It's just another ship, although not one I recognized." "I'm not surprised," the shift manager said, then realized she was wagging her tail, and she ended up wrapping it partially around her body, making sure that it was very tight, checking to make sure that she was still in her standard hourglass shape, before she continued, clearing her throat. "Yes, it is rare to see humans out here, but I will let you know something. It's even more rare to see them by themselves, as they tend to travel in packs for protection. Given that humans have a reputation for being skilled tacticians and warriors, it's very common for species to pick a fight with a human, just to test their mettle, as a human would say." From the other side of the room, another worker was a little confused and said, "Metal?" "Yes, the humans use that word in different ways. In fact, depending on how you use a certain word, it may have multiple meanings." "Sound confusing, but why would they test their metal? You mean their hardness? They're not exoskeletal." No. Test the mental toughness," the shift manager said. "It gets rather embarrassing if you actually do try to test that metal." Many of them were already turning towards her, and she realized that she had everybody's attention, probably for the first time in her entire shift. It had been very slow at this point. She continued, "Humanity, you see, entered the robotic age as they were finally disclosed the existence of sentience like us, and those, what they call non-terrestrials, as the way the humans put it. It was not long after that before they started having automatons walk around in forms that are in many ways very similar to human in their standard bipedal form. It becomes very easy to tell the automations from a human once you know what to look. At least it was that way for a while. You could just simply look and realize the difference between the two, but now, not so much. Human-shaped automatons they call androids. This got a snicker from a few, because android quite literally meant the stain of feces left on the toilet. They calmed themselves down as the shift manager. Well, in any case, they would get more and more advanced, these androids, to the point that the only species that could be relied on to tell the difference between them actually relied on their senses of smell. That's the only way they could tell them apart from a biological human. Though even with that, some decided that given the human's reputation, well, let's just say more than once, or I should say more than 100 times, an intoxicated species member would begin to insult a human's, and if the human responded or simply ignored this action, the intoxicated one would simply attack, trying to prove that they're better than the humans in any way, shape, or form. If they chose well, they would be able to damage a human before they were completely throttled and sent to the infirmary, many times not breathing afterwards. If they attacked a member of said human's kin, blood-related or not, the humans, usually the males, but not always, will go into a complete blind rage. What's worse than a screaming human beating the hell out of someone? A human that is silent as they're simply pummeling with their fists. All of you have been told about the Gavanti, which the humans refer to as Krabby Patties due to their appearance as some sort of ocean-dwelling animal on their homeworld. Yet, unlike those, the Gravanti have a very, very wide stature. We're all aware of this, even though there's none in here at the moment. When this particular Gravanti attacked the human that was about its same height, he did not realize that it was actually striking a very young human female, one that had just turned 5 human years old. Many of them are confused. Years? What is this word? Solar rotations around the star. Many of them simply, in their own language, went, "Oh," as the shift manager continues. The human patriarch proceeded to drive a very large fist down into the Gravanti with enough force that the carapace broke, and the human's fist and was able to open up with its 5 digits, reach into the body, grab a hold, and rip out the Gravanti's brain. We've all seen the video, yet this is usually where the video ends. I knew personnel who were there, and they said that the human that struck down simply stood up straight and tossed the brain off to the side as though it was nothing. Then they saw this very large human male turn towards the child, and everyone believed that he would do the same to the child, yet instead he simply wiped his hand off as he walked over, picked up the crying child, and comforted her until she stopped releasing fluid from her eyes. This, I can tell you, is what they humans call duality. So be careful when dealing with them when they arrive, because you don't know which dual side you're going to be on. Just do not make enemies of them. She then realized that everyone was simply staring. She had to remind them, make sure you're watching the monitors. You can listen to this, but still do your job. With that, the one next to her said, "Could you please continue? I'd like to know more." "Absolutely," she said. "Well, I will say, though it was gruesome to watch everything, at least for the Gavanti, at least that one didn't have to live with the embarrassment that comes from others attacking a different human form, only to discover that this one was an android. Normally, these androids are so dense that even Carillion slicehounds can't even damage it, which means many who go up and bite are just sitting there, grabbing onto an appendage or onto a neck, as the android just kind of looks at them with a face of, "What are you doing?" More than a few had to sink away in embarrassment as they realized they had just damaged themselves doing something very, very foolish. Also, this was done with witnesses that usually took a recording, and this would turn them into a laughingstock within their own species, so don't do it, as you do not want to deal with what's going to be coming as far as insults, especially from the humans. They are, in fact, masters of it. However, these random attacks are absolutely not the reason you will almost never see a real human around. The crew once again lifted their heads or turned their eye stalks as they wanted to pay full attention. "Eyes on the screens, and I'll let you know." She waited until everybody was looking and doing their job before she continued. During the Great War in the Lick systems, humans would don massive armors that enhanced their already freakish speed and strength. The chum that had declared war against the flea, so it was basically an insectoid versus insectoid fight, and the numbers on both sides are still difficult to comprehend, but most did try to stay out of it. Species did not want to get pulled into a battle that bad. That is, until the chum came out victorious and decided to push across to the next sector, believing that if they could take out one species, they could simply take out one after another after another. The humans have a phrase for this. They call it a domino effect. I still don't understand that, but I've been told they will teach me when they get here. The humans did try to aid other species as they were pretty far away. They tried to aid with medical and evacuation, but the chum would not let them do so. They slaughtered all the humans, and the chum openly declared how tasty humans are, especially while they were still alive. Some of you might actually be old enough to remember when it first came out before these videos were labeled restricted. The videos of the chum ripping small pieces off restrained aid workers as the aid workers screamed and thrashed against their bindings and simply tried to start breaking away, succeeding in a few times. But seeing each of these aid workers slowly die due to shock and lack of blood loss was enough for humans to mobilize. The chum believed this would be an easy victory and simply more food for them, more food that they seemed to enjoy because humans are one of the only species that actually produce adrenaline. This got everyone's attention as they realized that adrenaline is a controlled substance. Many had heard the rumors that humans actually make it within their own bodies, but now they have confirmation. The shift manager continued, "At first, nobody thought that the humans would do much. They figured they would go in, maybe win or lose a few battles, and then return to their own sectors and build up and wait the several decades before the chum arrived. However, the pure rage of humans and androids came out as the chum captured a shuttle full of young humans on an evacuation shuttle. The chum believed that since these young humans were easier to handle, they would be much easier to eat and much tender, and they believed that they sent out a video of them slowly tearing these children apart, they would simply horrify the humans and make them fear, making them hide. Well, they were half right. It did horrify the humans. On the battlefield, the humans in suits and the androids that ran with them sprinted past the front lines on the very first planet, Jakta, and paused only to get the wounded out, not seeming to care about the losses as they charged into the hives as though the devil herself held the controls of their suits, making them run forward. The armor was with them, firing right over their heads, the drones whipping around in different areas, the aircraft just buzzing around the sky, and of course the human fleet, tearing apart the chum fleet in orbit and giving close orbital fire support. When it was over, the chum were no more. But the loss of humans after all this was absolutely staggering. The war dragged on for well over a human decade, and there was unbelievable losses to the humans. Yet it seemed as though they didn't care. They just wanted revenge. However, with such losses, humans decide they would actually protect themselves by utilizing a technology no other species actually dares to use. It seems as though either they don't dare or they just can't get it to work. The humans, at least the majority of them, now survive in suspended animation capsules buried deep inside one of their many planets. They utilize quantum entanglement with something they call Link to the Stars. At least that's what it used to be called. And they're able to use this so that humans can actually use robots as surrogates to go out into space. And it seems as though there's no limit to this. Working alongside the androids, they still experiment, they still expand around, and they still continue commerce. And they even have full relationships, even though they're not fully there. This is why it's almost impossible to ever see a real human. From across the room, one of the technicians, "Why don't we just go to their own sector and say hi? You can meet a human that way at least, yes? It might be a nice vacation if they're that pleasant to everybody who doesn't attack them." "Oh, I wouldn't try to visit their sectors without permission ever. You can vacation, but be careful. Don't go anywhere without permission." Everyone was suddenly looking at her again, and she's heads down. "Just listen. The automated defenses that the humans have now are so robust that entire fleets have been obliterated before they could even get close enough to even start preparations for planetfall. The humans are very, very particular about their territory. And before you ask, I don't know if those are real humans on that ship or not. Before you attempt to say anything, though, I suggest that you stay as cordial as possible." "Why is that?" one asked. "Perhaps I didn't make myself clear," the shift manager said. "Now that they use automatons as surrogates, they have the ability to switch control to other bodies. Besides, they can do that. They always keep a few extras around, extras of other species like us." Everyone started to look at her again, and they all seemed confused, many flipping their antennae, some flicking their tails, others just turning their head a little bit sideways. "Okay, if you still don't understand, I will put it this way," as she blushed just a little bit. "There are 3 basic needs for a sentient. We all know this, also known as the 3 base desires. Now, the first one is taken care of because they don't need to sleep. Their stasis pods continuously recover their brains. If they want to, they can do as another species on their planet and sleep half a brain at a time if they so choose. However, the ones I know from the battlefield say they don't like that. They have something called nightmares. I'll explain that later. Humans have the ability to hibernate every so many hours. It's very strange, and I don't want to get into this. Before I go too far away, I need to talk about the other base desires, and they don't need food, as their true bodies are actually in stasis. They don't need any sustenance. That only leaves one left, and you all know what that is. Everyone inside took a few moments to realize what was going on, and a few didn't quite get it until they realized that the shift manager was actually rubbing up and down her torso with her tail. This was a sign that she was getting anxious. Many times this meant anxious as she has to run over to the latrine, or anxious as though she's hungry. However, that was not the subject. It was at that moment they heard the clank, a common clank that they all hear whenever a ship is fully docked. With this, her eyes got a bit wide, and she immediately looked up towards the time device and thought, oh, the new shift is coming in. She then cleared her throat, an action she picked up from the humans. Now, since it's the end of the shift, if you don't mind, I'll be leaving a little early. I see on the manifest a human and his android companion are there that I recognize. And since humans are so friendly, I'm going to ask them if they would treat me as well as they did last time we were here. I suggest you not worry about trying to test their mettle in a fight with humans now that they're on the station. Now that they are human automatons, you can test their mettle in a much more pleasurable way. With that, she then realized that her tail was now squeezing onto her ribcage really tight, and she had to release it. She then, right before leaving, said, if you do decide to go and test their mettle in such a way, do ask them to be very soft with you. This made many of them confused, and she turned ever so slightly to the side so that one of her eyes she could see. You have to remember, they are humans after all. Doing such activities, they could end up breaking you in half, even though both halves will be smiling. With that, the shift manager left with her tail wagging in the breeze. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me today on this short story. Before I go, I gotta send some big thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be Erica Gem, MTF Guard, Brian Kemp, SS Demon, Chris Dixon, and Guardian Sage. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.